Welcome to the Exam Room Live, brought to you by the Physicians Committee. Hello, I am the weight loss champion, Chuck Carroll, and this is the healthiest half hour anywhere online today. So we appreciate you joining us right here on Facebook and on YouTube as we strive to raise your health IQ. Now, coming up today, I am going to be joined by a board-certified interventional cardiologist and a man who is about as passionate about nutrition and preventative medicine as anyone we have ever had on the show. The one and only Dr. Columbus Batiste will be here with us as we take a look at your heart today. Today's show all about the heart. So what are the most heart healthy foods? What are the foods you should be eating to avoid having a heart attack and lowering your cholesterol? What if you have a family history of heart disease? What can you do to reduce your risk there? We're going to be getting into all of that. Lots of great questions, and we want some more questions from you. So go ahead and post your question for Dr. Batiste in the comments section or in the chat, wherever it is you want to do it. You can do it there. You can also tweet it to us using the hashtag ExamRoomLive. So let's get the party started and open up the doctor's mailbag as we welcome Dr. Batiste back to the show. So good to see you again, my friend.
Oh, it's great seeing you. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. You know, we've got some snow on the ground, but they are calling for temperatures here in the 60s finally. So we're going to get some thawing, but you're out in California. So I'm assuming you've had a more mild winter.
Oh, it's gorgeous. I mean, not to rub anything inside your face, but listen, the weather has been incredible. Great temperatures for getting outside, the sunlight, clear skies. You can see for miles. I love it.
All right. Now, so that actually brings me to a great first question here. When it comes to your patients and the people who you come in and they have trouble with their heart, what are some of the common themes that you notice? Is it that typical standard American diet and sedentary lifestyle where they're not spending a whole heck of a lot of time outdoors?
It is. It is. It's all the above. I mean, I think that the American lifestyle is not conducive for health and wellness. We speak about the pursuit of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But in actuality, we're not doing that. We're almost like rats in a maze, and we go back and forth inside this little treadmill loop from work to stress, and we're living in this stressful state. And that's where a big problem that I see. I see stress is pervasive amongst my patients. And as a result of stress, I see that domino effect lead to inactivity. I see that domino effect lead to nutritional indiscretions and nutritional stress that then builds the fire of disease and for heart disease that we see just exploding inside of our country.
Well, let's try to alleviate some of that stress and arm people with some nutrition knowledge today. I think just knowing some things helps to alleviate stress a lot of times for me. So hopefully we can go ahead and do that today. And so our first question comes to us from Walt, flat out, what are the best foods to eat to avoid having a heart attack?
Wow, that's a great question. Well, one of the things that what we know is when we look at my top several foods, top three foods, I'll give you those. First, I'm going to hit you with the green leafy vegetables, right? So they're rich in nutrients, rich in folate, they're rich in something called dietary nitrates. And so what happens with dietary nitrates is that it impacts your the arteries of your heart of your body. And that inner lining is kind of a Superman. It's almost like a superhero style thing. It's very protective, but when it's damaged by the kryptonite of standard American diet, that's what leads to this domino effect of heart disease and all of its accomplices of diabetes and heart disease, and hypertension. And so we want to take care of that. That's where these green leafy vegetables come into play. They actually help to regenerate and rejuvenate this area here. So that's extremely powerful. Green leafy vegetables, kale and spinach and things of that nature. What's number two? My berries. So fruits are great, but here's a key thing, right? What happens when you slice a banana? Oh, bananas are great for you, but what happens when you slice a banana or apple? They turn brown, right? What happens when you have berries, blueberries and blackberries and raspberries and pomegranate seeds? They don't turn brown. They're rich in antioxidants. So when you feed your body with these antioxidants, they sacrifice themselves for your behalf. And so now they help to strengthen. So studies have shown that these foods are extremely powerful for lowering blood pressure, extremely beneficial for your heart in general. Those are powerful. We know that whole grains, the fiber that's contained inside whole grains and is extremely beneficial. Whole grains and legumes can be extremely beneficial in reducing your burden of disease. So those are my catchments right there. The top three I would say are my berries, my green leafy vegetables, and my whole grains are going to be in there in with legumes.
Solid follow-up question here from Gus, and I think this is something that a lot of people are probably wondering. He writes, "Heart attacks run in my family. What is the best way to make sure that I don't have one?"
Yeah, yeah. First, I think the first thing to know when you're at risk is just like your bank account, Chuck. So when you look at that large bank account that you have now, for you, you may not have to worry about the money in your bank account. For people like me, I have to worry about it. So that means I have to, number one, check my values. So you want to go ahead and be tested. You want to know what your blood pressure is. You want to know what your cholesterol is. You want to know what your weight is, and don't be afraid of that scale. Step on it. It's going to give you a sense of what's going on in your body. So first concept of trying to prevention is knowledge of understanding that. The second thing for understanding about this relationship of family dynamics is that your DNA is not your destiny. That is indeed the key that study after study is telling us, that your DNA is not your destiny, that you can actually shift the confines of these things. It's more of like instead of it being a dictatorship, your genes are not a dictatorship. They're more of a democracy. It's a round table, and you can sway the vote based on the things that you do, the way that you think, the way that you move, the way that you feel, the things that you put into your body in terms of nutrition and those value adds. So it is true that your DNA plays a role, but it's a very small role. The most important thing that happens from families is passing along the habits, passing along the cookbooks, about passing along people who live. When you show kids how to grow food, they're going to eat that food. When you go outside with your kids and you walk and you run with them, guess what they're going to do? They're going to walk and they're going to run and they're going to play. When you teach them eating healthful foods, they're going to come back to it. Even if they go off divergent for a period of time, they're going to come back to these things that you show them. So families are key importance because they pass these things along.
And that's such an important message too that so often gets overlooked. People just assume that it is fate. Say you use the
Yeah.
word destiny, and people just are like, "Well, my grandfather had it, my father had it, and my grandfather's father he had it. So there's no way that I'm going to avoid this." Well, the fact of the matter is, as you just explained, there's a great chance that you can absolutely not follow in their footsteps in this regard. Question from Don: what is the best diet for reducing the risk of heart disease?
Yeah. So it's very similar as when we talked about prevention, right? So a lot of the work, and you folks out there who are followers of this great show know the work of the likes of Dean Ornish, know the works of Dr. Esselstyn, about many others that are out there. And so we know that one of the key things is that it's a multiplicity of things that play a role. And so when we look at nutrition as a key core component, that studies have shown as you begin to move away from eating any and everything towards a plant-based diet, whether or not we're looking at the Adventist Health Study, the EPIC Oxford Study, we're looking at the Lifestyle Heart Trial, we're looking at the Mount Abu Open Heart Study. What it's showing us is it's telling us that as you move away from eating these animal-rich proteins that are high in saturated fats, that stimulate your gut microbiome to produce trimethylamine oxide, this TMAO, that as you move away from those things, your heart disease begins to improve. Studies have shown that you improve. Remember, I spoke about just in the segment before about that lining of the vessel called the endothelium. Well, that is very reactive. It's an alive substance, right? So it produces something called nitric oxide, which allows it to dilate, allows it to constrict. And studies have shown that these animal products can impair it. And so one of the phenomenal works that have been done in the past showed that when you transition away from these animal products towards eating fruits, vegetables, whole grains, beans, legumes, and seeds, that all of a sudden what ends up happening is that you have improvement in the dilatory effect of your vessels, which confers beneficial effects on your heart. It stabilizes the lining. That's really the purpose of statin therapy, right? So statin is not just solely about lowering the cholesterol, it's about stabilizing that lining, that inner lining. And so if you can accomplish this through your nutrition, there's power that's there, right? Your lifestyle can actually lend to it and it can have medicinal purposes. And that's really the value.
So you mentioned seeds and nuts there, and a lot of people are wondering about the amount of fat in a heart healthy diet. So how much fat should we be eating every day?
Well, when we talk about nuts and we talk about fat in general, even if we speak to the American Heart Association, which is a little bit higher in terms of their recommendations of 20 to 30% fat, and we talk about some of the low fat, less than 10%, we have to be very cognizant of the amount. Now, I will tell you one of the biggest pros, and I know this is an area of quite concern in many inside of even the plant-based world and outside the world, is really the idea of fat from nuts and seeds. And so when we look at studies, the studies have shown that small amounts may have some benefit that's there in terms of walnuts. But here's the catch: I don't have them. And the reason why is because I know I'm a snackaholic. I know I am a sweetaholic at nature. I'm a recoverer. So I don't have that self control. So I'll tend to have more than what I should have. I'm going to have more than 2 or 3 tablespoons of raw, unsalted walnuts, hazelnuts, Brazil nuts, or seeds that are there. So I choose not to have those. They're rich in omega 3s, which are powerful because you want that omega 6 to omega 3 ratio to be low, right? Otherwise, it's high inside of the American culture, which portends disease. So they're rich in omega 3s, which is extremely beneficial. It helps with your mental function. So there's value that's there, but we have to be careful in the way in which we approach it. And the American way tends to be more is better. And that's problematic in terms of it. So we want to reduce the amounts, but we want to mainly look at whole foods. That's the key. Stay away from processed oil. Stay away from highly refined processed nuts that with sugar and salt and all those things. That's what you want to stay clear of. And that's going to give you the value for your arteries of your heart, give you the value in terms of overall. What's good for your heart's good for the rest of your body, good for diabetes, good for stroke prevention. It's going to be good for cancer prevention as well.
Oh man, you are not the only one that has a hard time just limiting it to maybe one handful of nuts. I mean, when you get that jar in front of you, it's so hard not to just walk away from it. It's so hard.
It
Uh,
is.
I'm
It is
telling
because
you.
I mean, when I first kind of started really transforming my diet, I'd have a can of nuts on my desk at the office. I'm eating healthy, pop, pop, pop. And the thing is they weren't even raw nuts.
Right.
They were honey roasted at times. They were salted with extra oil on there. And I'm like, I'm eating for my health. Why am I not? How come I'm not losing weight? How come I'm gaining weight? And you begin to wonder because we have this in our mindset, this lack of self control, and we continue to go on, and it becomes a victim of the standard American diet in terms of the salt, sugar, and fat, and what we're putting in our bodies.
Oh man, yeah. And just a quick question. Is it important if you are going to indulge in nuts, if you are one of the people who can limit it to just that palmful a day, to make sure that you're picking up either raw or dry roasted nuts, ones that don't have any added oil?
Absolutely, absolutely. So nuts, I mean, listen, if we go back to the way nuts really were, they are encased in the shell. And the meat of the nut you have to actually pick out. So number one, there's effort that goes into it. So when you're sitting there and you're saying, okay, I'm going to just purchase my nuts that I'm into in order to eat, these, as Chuck mentioned, are pan fried. They're pan roasted with oil inside of it. Salt is added to it as well, on top of this being already a nutrient dense, highly caloric substance that's there. So now you're having excessive amounts because of the fact it's readily available. And that's where the problem really lies. So I know I'm not good at measuring out. And just to kind of contradict you, I know this is what you meant. I don't like the handful analogy because here's the thing. My handful back in the day, I would have it where it's almost pouring out of my hand. I had big old clumps of it. I wasn't taking just a small palmful. I'm taking this clump out and I'm putting some in, put some more in. Oh, I just had a handful. What does that mean?
Yep.
What
Yep.
exactly does that mean? So I encourage folks to be very specific and very intentional. Just like, I mean, cooks out there will say, oh, I cook by ear, that I just put a sprinkle of this, a dash of this. Well, there's 2,000 milligrams of sodium in a teaspoon of salt. Don't cook by ear. Don't measure by these arbitrary values. Be very specific as you're starting out. Be very specific, just like you want me to be when I'm prescribing you pills. You don't want me to say, I'll give you just a sprinkle of statin, a dash of beta blockers, and a little rounded out with a little bit of ACE inhibitors. No, you want me to be very precise.
Yeah,
And so
man.
as you're going through with some of these things, you need to be very precise.
I'll tell you, one of the things that helped me was actually finally taking the time to look at the nutrition labels on just a jar of peanut butter. And again, like I was looking for peanut butter that did not have any added sugar or oil or salt or anything like that. I just wanted plain old, just mashed up peanuts. But then you flip it over and you see the amount of fat there. And then you look at the serving size, it's like 2 tablespoons. Well, the 2 tablespoons of peanut butter, if you like just scoop that out and you look at it, you're like, that's nothing. So you really do have to be extra careful with this.
Yes, absolutely. And that's one of the values of having the other things we spoke about. When it comes to fruits and vegetables and whole and the other whole grains, and we're talking about legumes, excuse me, beans, you don't really have to worry about the volume. Your body's going to dictate it. Why? It's rich in fiber, right? It's rich in fiber. It's not that calorie density is not the same level. So it depends on your goal. It's not saying that it's an issue of we have to move away from thinking in terms of good and bad solely in terms of what is most health promoting for my goals, right? So if I'm looking towards saying, okay, I need to be intentional in investing to try and alter one particular issue, cholesterol, family history of diabetes, or family history of heart disease, I'm being very methodical in my approach. I'm doing my meditation, I'm getting my exercise, I'm getting my sleep, and I'm rounding it out with the core component of nutrition and highlighting those things that are actually health promoting. That's the key. Is health promotion. Is it health promoting for your body?
All right, let's take a question from Elizabeth here. We mentioned added oil in peanut butter, but oil is also there. There's this belief out there that oil can be heart healthy. So she's wondering, for all heart patients, should they avoid oil?
Well, there's no need for oil. So I think where the confusion and difficulty, I won't say so much confusion, is that when we look at studies and you look at the famous study, and you look at the famous Predimed study out of Europe, and looking at the replacement of saturated fats with mono and polyunsaturated fats. So there's no doubt on earth that saturated and trans fats are the worst things in the world. They are just they will attack you, they will kill you, they cause every sense. When you begin to move towards the polyunsaturated and the monounsaturated, where these large scale studies show that when you replace these are better for you. But here's the key. We know too as well that the whole foods are better than the processed foods. And we look at, once again, is this nutritionally valuable for me? Are there nutrients in this substance that are adding to it? Is there, to use Joel Furman's equation, the health quotient? Is it the health over the calories, nutrition over the calories equals the healthful nature of the food? What's the nutritional value of oil that's 125 calories inside of a tablespoon? So do I dissuade people? Yes. Now here's why in part I dissuade people additionally from use of oils is because most patients I interact with, they're frying. They're heating the oil. They're using it in order to grill their meat or to fry other things. It could be vegetables too as well. And we know that what that does, it changes the chemical structure of the oil, of the olive oil too as well. We know that on top of this is contributing to something we call advanced glycation in products, that these fried foods and these meats and things of that nature, they lead to another level of damage, of browning of the vessels. So there's so many layers as to why I recommend folks to stay clear of oils unnecessarily. Use vegetable broth. It's easier. Now, if they were to decide to go ahead and have an oil, would I tell them, and they're insistent on them, okay, yeah, I tell them extra virgin olive oil over the others based upon those studies, but I still dissuade folks from having it for optimal heart health.
Okay, so now let's talk about something that I saw on your Instagram here recently. You posted a news clip of a gentleman celebrating his 111th birthday. Let me say that again.
Yes.
111 years old. And he was asked, well, what are the foods that you really think are keeping you around the most? Now, he was eating a plant-based diet, but among the foods that he said that he ate every day was olive oil. Would I be correct in assuming here that he probably was not frying anything with that olive oil? He was maybe drizzling a little bit on a salad or something like that?
Now, Chuck, I love that video. That video was incredible. But one key thing that made me laugh about the video is described the olive oil, but listen to the way he used the olive oil for his feet. to massage his feet. He said
Oh,
that's how you keep your feet as smooth as butter and no issues whatsoever, is that you massage your feet in olive oil every night.
there it is. Okay, I totally missed that part because they put it in that list of all the other foods that he eats every day.
Yes, 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 but yes, correctly. You are correct that in terms of frying, that's a whole different thing when you are adjusting. Now, here's the biggest problem is, once again, I describe, so imagine this for those of us out there who are listening. You decide to go to your favorite Italian restaurant and you're hungry, and so now on top of you having the bread, and it's better, yeah, if it's sourdough, but you have the bread and you're soaking it in the olive oil. And I just told you that olive oil has what? It has 125 calories per tablespoon. Well, you're not just soaking up 1 tablespoon on there. You're likely a tablespoon is what, half of an ounce? That means 2 tablespoons, 250 calories per ounce. You're soaking up 2, 3, 4 ounces of this. Your calories are up to 1,000 calories just in your appetizers, right? So we're looking at the impact of this on your body. Now we're looking at the potential for weight gain. We're looking too as well of, there's been small studies and there's been contradictory studies in terms of the endothelial impact in terms of oils, but we know that this at a minimum, it's not adding nutritional value that's there on a consistent basis because it's been extracted, all the fiber, the phytonutrients from those olives. Eat the olives as opposed to the olive oil. 40 olives for about a tablespoon of olive oil. I believe it's somewhere around 12 to 15 ears of corn for a tablespoon of corn oil. And so we have to begin to transition to eating real food, whole food.
And by the way, that guy at 111, I mean, he looked like he was 70 at most.
Yes.
Just incredible, this gentleman. I mean, I was blown away. Check it. Matter of fact, head over to his Instagram as soon as we wrap up the segment at Heart Healthy Doc, at Healthy Heart Doc. Heart. I got
Yeah.
this. It's up on the not Healthy Heart Doc. There it is. I got it. Sometime I'll learn how to talk. But anyway, check that out. Just incredible, incredible post. We were talking a little bit about sodium earlier. Topper is wondering how bad is added sodium for you?
Oh man, it is a problem. It's a problem inside Western diets. We know that we're probably ingesting over 10,000 milligrams of sodium per day on average from processed foods. Most folks are saying, "Hey, listen, I don't add it to my food because it's already built in," right? And so if you're eating whole foods, right, with singular names, I always kind of joke and I'll say, we know people by singular names. That's how you know they've reached a level in which they're incredible, right? Madonna, MJ, Michael, LeBron, all these singular names that they've reached a level of status. Broccoli, kale, red beans. These are singular names. And so when you're eating like that, that's when you don't have to worry about the sodium content because your body's getting just the precise amount that it needs. So what happens with sodium intake? So studies have been shown that with this excessive salt intake, that independent of elevation of blood pressure, that it can impact your brain, it can impact your blood vessels and that lining of the vessel, as I mentioned to before. It can restrict your vessels from expanding like what they should. We know about the fluid retention. We know about the shift in microbiome, and there's been even some suggestion about shifting in terms of your immune system. So there's what we're doing to ourselves in terms of this westernized standard American diet. It's so layered in terms of its damage, that we begin to wonder, and we're so used to this norm of not feeling well that it becomes the new norm. Is that I'm used to being bigger. I'm used to being tired. I'm used to having to take medications at 75% plus from the Mayo Clinic proceedings a while ago showed that 75% of Americans are taking pills, prescription pills. And so this is problematic. It really, truly is problematic.
Let's take it next level knowledge here. This is a question from Maya. Wants to know, should vegans supplement with L-carnitine for heart health? Would TMAO still then be a concern?
So, in terms of with the supplements, I mean, one of the hard parts about the supplement business is that for the most part, many of these supplements haven't been real proven inside of randomized trials, right? Or even large scale epidemiologic trials. We're looking at large scale meta-analysis is going to have substantial benefits in helping to dictate what we should take or what shouldn't take. And so not having that means I can't strongly support taking these supplements in that particular instance, with the exception of things that are detrimental, like not having enough B12. or if a person is deficient for vitamin D because they live in an area in which they're not able to get enough sunlight and because of their work. So we do know that number one, that carnitine is a driver for TMAO, and we do know that these things can become problem. That it's a major problem out there. But we know that carnitine is primarily found inside of animal source products, not completely, but it's primarily found there. So I think the key scenario is eating real food, whole food. Right now is the one thing that's been shown. If there's studies that come out telling us really large scale about carnitine, I'll be the first in line to promote it in terms of taking the supplement.
Talking a little bit earlier about genetics, Elizabeth here in the chat writes that she's not a heart patient herself, but her dad died at 49 of a stroke and his dad died at 39. She says that she just started a whole food plant-based diet a month ago and is sauteing with water. That's incredible here. And the fact that
Yes.
she's making these types of changes, again, I believe goes to the notion that she doesn't necessarily have to follow in their health footsteps.
Absolutely, absolutely. You used the title to introduce me that I'm an interventional cardiologist, which means that part of my job is to go in and stop a heart attack in its throes, put in stents or metals to prop the vessel open, to help a person stop with their symptoms of angina or chest discomfort or shortness of breath, whatever it may be, and stop the progression. Well, also, so I believe using that same thought process is that there is no prevention, there's only intervention. So for Elizabeth out there, I think that you are intervening right now, right? Before you actually have the manifestation. But we know that the groundwork for disease is laid in our youth before the age of 10. I mean, we know this for those who are well entrenched inside of whole food plant-based and the docs who've been out there kind of discussing things. We know that the foundation is laid. So the question is, can we shift the foundation? Can we alter it? And that's what you're doing. That's why there's so much power in what you're doing. And it's not, I mean, one of the things that dissuades folks a lot of times is that it's not all or none phenomenon. It's not a guarantee. To use a sports analogy for someone who's a sports fan, I'm a beleaguered sports fanatic, and so you want to hit a layup instead of a 3-point shot. You want to score the goal from right there outside the goalie's box as opposed from the 50-yard line. You want to do these things, and you're increasing the odds, and that's really what we're speaking about. That by adopting a whole food plant-based diet, you're increasing the odds exponentially of improving your health span. Now, remember, I said health span, not lifespan, Chuck, right? Now, why is that? Right? Health span, none of us know how long our lives are going to be. But if I can live on this earth as healthy as I can, and I was just talking with someone who I'm mentoring a bit there. I gave a lecture and he sought me out afterwards. He's a high-level exec, gave a lecture for their company. And I just for fun, I don't do it often. I don't do it for pay or anything of this sort. But I said, let me help this guy out. And so we've been adopting a whole food plant-based diet over the past 2 weeks. And so just this morning, I asked him, I said, well, tell me how you're doing. He said, because he was like, Doc, I don't have any heart disease, whatever. But after hearing you, I think I should do something. And I said, okay. I said, so 2 weeks, he's doing it, right? So he's dropped 10 pounds in 2 weeks. I said, how are you feeling? Tell me how you're feeling. I said, I don't know if it's just placebo or what, but I actually, I'm less lethargic. I have I feel a little bit clearer. I'm sleeping a little bit better. I don't know if it's just because of the weight loss. And I said, it's kind of funny how we ascribe everything to something else. I said, there's value. I said, because you are transforming your body. You're changing on the inside. And that's where there's so much power. So once again, to Elizabeth, kudos to you. I applaud you. This is what we all need to do, is to take our health in on our own shoulders and move things forward.
How much do you know about nitric oxide here, changing gears a little bit? Do you know
Yeah.
a lot? Because we have an interesting question here from Stephanie. She wants to know, what is the best way to prepare greens for maximum nitrous oxide production? Is it boiled? Is it steamed? Or is it just to eat them raw?
So that's a good thing. So lightly blanched, we know that. So I won't try and claim to know excessive amount that's there, but in terms of preparation, we know that chewing and the mastication process is extremely important to break the bonds and to release the isothiocyanates that are there that are going to help trigger the process towards developing the nitric oxides, that are the dietary nitrates that are needed. So chewing is extremely important. So whether or not you blend, you can lightly blanch. You want to maintain the crunchiness. You don't want your vegetables to be limp. and to soak out all of the nutrients from it. In the historical times, they called that down south the pot liquor, right? Is where and then they would drink the juice from like the boiled down greens. Well, you don't have to drink all of that. Just don't cook it where it's so limp. And that's where you're going to get value, that you're going to get the nutrients that you need in order to convert that. So I would say lightly blanch, don't overcook. I would say try and chew as opposed to juice. I think the version of that, if you're inclined towards that, is smoothies. You're breaking those bonds, which will help kind of release it, because that mastication is extremely important in the process. Breaking those fibrous bonds to release it is what my understanding is regarding dietary nitrates. But remember, you also get it measured amounts from sunlight, from stores in your skin. Can actually help. Another value of vitamin D from the sun, it helps release nitric oxide. That can help lower the blood pressure there too as well. So power all around.
All right, we're going to bounce around a little bit with the time that we have remaining. In this country, we just have this love affair with processed foods, refined foods. And in a lot of those, you see palm oil is listed. Blind Guy, his wife, their life. Phenomenal husband and wife from Norfolk, Virginia, my hometown. They have a great YouTube channel. They're watching today, and they want to know, does the doctor have any information on palm oil? They say that they've read that palm oil from Africa and South American countries that's not blended works like a lubricant that helps to eliminate plaque in the arteries. What do you know about that?
So I'll be honest, I'm not familiar with those studies that they're quoting or that they're referencing, rather. I am aware that there's a heavy use of palm oil in West Africa, right? And that is used an awful lot. I've seen that reported. I've seen that described. What I can tell you, and so it's very similar. I see it very similar in terms of coconut oil. And I would love to see more research that as we begin to tease things through a bit more, just in a very similar fashion, that there was this movement towards coconut oil and we need to use it for everything. And the studies actually began to refute that, began to show that the inflammatory process indices were abnormal with the ingestion of coconut oil. And so I'd be curious to see about palm oil. But once again, oil is oil is oil, in terms of it being a liquefied form where you extract out and process in order to have this liquid form that's used oftentimes for cooking and for heating at higher temperatures. And that can be problematic in general. So I've seen that a consistent theme, although I have not seen specific literature towards palm oil. But you know what? I'm thankful for this question, because I will look it up. I've interacted with quite a few West Africans, and so this specific form of question hasn't been posed to me, but I will take it on to research it out a bit.
And I'm telling you, if you get a chance this afternoon, Dr. Batiste, please do take a look at their YouTube channel. I mean, you want to talk about some adventures that are just the funniest things you will ever see in your entire life, but just go to show that there's no such thing as being disabled. It's just abled in a different way. I mean, this is the very definition of it. They are fantastic, and I like them so very much. Next question comes to us from Bill. How do I reduce my resting heart rate? It's currently 88.
It's a good question. That's a great question. So on this theme of whole food nutrition and so forth, one of the things that's been shown is actually beans may actually, in some smaller studies, actually lower the heart rate, which is interesting, right? So, our beans, we're talking about red beans, black beans, garbanzos, any particular form of beans might be beneficial. But we know too as well that we're looking at questions I'd ask are, what's your hydration like? That's something that oftentimes is overlooked in discussions about lifestyle, as a person's hydration. And dehydration may in fact lead to this chronic dehydrated state of elevated resting blood pressure. The second thing I'd look at is a person's caffeine intake. So whether or not it's in the form of teas or whether or not it's in the form of coffee, being aware of the caffeine, because it's a stimulant. So we're driving this cortisol state inside of our body, or fight or flight state, which can be problematic. The third thing I'd look at is, the next thing is a person's sleep. So I want to know what your sleep is like too as well. Are you getting close to 7 hours? That, once again, we're looking at that cortisol cascade. Is it your body constantly ramped up? That's there. And lastly, exercise activity. What's your exercise like? We know that as you improve the efficiency of your heart, so just so you all believe, I actually am a doctor, something called your cardiac output is equal to, which is the amount of blood that's ejected is equal to your stroke volume, the force of blood expelling from the heart times your heart rate. So if my heart rate is faster, maybe the stroke volume is possibly not as optimal in order to maintain the same level of cardiac output. Obviously, as I need more cardiac output as I'm exerting myself, the heart rate goes up naturally so. So I want to, that's one of the goals of where I would lead folks is being more active, can be simply walking, getting more sleep, hydrating more, eating more beans. And these are the foods of the blue zones. We know that that beans are some of the staples of the blue zones around of the most long-lived individuals around the world.
Want to say quickly hello to Lana, who's on day 4 of eating a whole food plant-based diet. She says that she's living with 3 huge eating omnivores, so she's hoping for some good vibes. So Lana, we are sending all that we have your way. I think that
Yes,
you got this, Lana. You got that. The fact that you want to do this tells me that you can do this. So stick with it. You're going to be okay. Wouldn't you agree? It's all about the mindset.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. 2 more really quickly. First, what is your opinion on the keto diet from a heart health standpoint?
Yeah. So first I'll say this is that anything that moves you away from the standard American diet, it's value add, right? So it's valuable for moving you away from standard American diet, the highly processed foods, the shell foods, all the full of salt, sugar and fat too. Now, unfortunately, the keto diet still keeps you in the fat. Now, where the keto diet, the only areas of science to my last review that keto has shown any efficacy were in seizures of small children, but not in terms of long-term benefits for the cardiovascular or cardiometabolic system. And that's where it's problematic. When we look at the breakdown of, once again, saturated fats, which only come from animal products, and animal protein too as well. So we can move away from the fat concept to just animal protein. We know that those things have a poor prognosis overall in terms of longevity, in terms of heart health as well, on the larger scale. Repeatedly is what we see this consistently throughout literature. So that in my mind, that takes me, that eliminates the idea of paleo, eliminates the idea of keto when I look at these longitudinal, these long-term things. And I think more as science evolves and we're learning more of the why, that's where we're finding things like the microbiome and its impact in trimethylamine. And we're seeing that these things stimulate this pathway, which also really supercharges these disease processes. So in terms of keto, to answer your question, keto for heart health, no, I would not use keto for heart health. And that's it. And the other reason why that's a great question is many times your why is really important. If your why is, how can I lose weight? Okay, yeah, keto may actually help you lose weight. A lot of ways can help you lose weight. But if your question is, how can I achieve heart health based upon literature that's out there, keto's not the answer. A whole food plant-based diet is the answer that is most consistent across the board.
Final question is a great one for anyone who is just beginning their journey. How soon after changing to a plant-based diet does the repair process begin? And what happens to those clogged blood vessels as we begin to eat all of these plant-based foods?
It's great question. So we know that it starts early on. Now, how early does it start within a day or so? I can't really glean it down to that specific granular level. But studies have shown, Dean Orner showed that within a matter of 3 weeks, that symptoms of angina seem to improve, that symptoms of functionality seem to improve. We know that there's transformations in terms of the inflammatory profile, which means like your cholesterol, your C-reactive protein, your interleukin 6, all these things that are the makeup of atherosclerotic process that we can see this happen. So remember, one of the things that we talked about, it's not an issue that we have to worry about complete resolution or dissolving of all the plaque that's there. It's more about stabilizing the plaque to prevent it from erupting and getting angry. Think of it like like an area of the world which is prone towards conflict and warfare. If you can stabilize that area with the United Nations to keep it peaceful, then you're being beneficial, but it's always potentially underlying there. So you stabilize this plaque area. The other thing is that you get the small amounts of regression is all you need to improve the flow by 4 times. So you're improving the blood flow, which means that your heart is working more efficiently, which means you feel better, which is our goal is prevent heart attacks, longevity and reduction of symptoms. That's the goal. And so there's power there. And I would say overall, based on the research, probably within the month, those changes that are happening inside are developing and become manifest by your blood work and your blood pressure and things of that nature in general.
Man, Dr. Batiste, I could talk to you all day, my man. I feel like this conversation just needs to keep going and going and going, but we can't do that today. So I would love to invite you to come back on sometime soon.
Love to, love to. It's always great chatting with you. And man, you know what? Two things I love: the heart and nutrition. So this is great.
Doesn't get much better than that. And oh, by the way, perhaps your next opportunity to see Dr. Batiste is coming up July 15th through 17th at the International Conference on Nutrition and Medicine. I understand that you're going to be one of the 20 plus speakers at this year's conference. What is it that you're going to be talking about this year?
Yeah, so it's a great format. I mean, PCRM is always moving the bar forward and how they're delivering information. And so this year, what they're looking at doing is, you all are looking at doing is teaming together a culinary component with a lecture component to really deliver the message. And so we're really diving in to look at in cultural aspects inside communities of color, looking at the burden of disease and also the food and how there can be improvements that have been made, still holding on to who you are, still holding on to your heritage, the things that you like inside every culture around the world. There's plant-based foods inside there. There's power in the nutrition. There's power in those cookbooks, not so that we don't have to pass along bad habits. We can pass along good habits while maintaining our culture. And so that's what this segment is roughly going to be about.
Oh man, I love that so very much. So here's what you need to do to register right now. You see the address on the screen, pcrm.org/ICNM. And if you register before March 1st, you're going to get an enormous savings, just $299 for all 3 days. And if you're a student right now, it's just $175 for the entire conference. And continuing education credits are available for doctors, dietitians, nutritionists, nurses, anybody who needs them. They are available as well. Hope to see you there, Dr. Batiste. I know I will see you there, and we will talk to you again very soon, my friend.
Look forward to it. Always good. Take care.
And don't forget to subscribe to the Exam Room Podcast by the Physicians Committee on Apple Podcast or wherever shows are available. You will get a whole lot of information there, including a full replay of today's show coming up in just a little bit. So that's on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever shows are available. Look for the Exam Room by the Physicians Committee. Hit that subscribe button and leave a 5-star rating if you would be so kind. And that, my friend, is all the time that we have for today. I want to say thank you one more time to Dr. Columbus Batiste for bestowing his wisdom with us and helping us to raise our nutrition IQs. And to the crew behind the scenes, rocking the ones and twos, making the magic happen for us. I appreciate you guys as always. And to you, my exam roomies, thank you so very much for taking a health journey with us today. And for everyone here at the Physicians Committee, I am the weight loss champion, Chuck Carroll. We'll talk to you again soon. But until then, stay safe, take a stand, and keep it plant-based.